What's up, guys? We are back with another Mythic Legions review, jumping back into the All-Star side of thing, and we're taking a look at two figures today, two massive figures. We are taking a look at the All-Stars set of Trolls. Now, these guys kind of have a unique situation going on where we have two Trolls that are meant to, one, reintroduce Trolls that are relatively expensive on the aftermarket, but also provide new parts or repainted parts for folks who maybe just want a new Troll. So you can get an old Troll or you can get a new Troll. However, both of these figures ended up having a factory snafu and ended up not getting the original heads. So this is supposed to be BRONTUS, the Cyclops, but instead he has the Stone Troll head only in the box. This guy is also missing the chain that goes with him, but we've got two. And I mean, these things are just the biggest things ever. So we've also got a new Ice Troll to take a look at. So we've got a new version of BRONTUS and we've got a new version of the Ice Troll. So we're missing the original Ice Troll head here, and we have the BRONTUS head, ironically enough, repainted for this particular release. Now, I should say with the caveat that we are getting the missing pieces. They're just going to come later. So they've already addressed the problem and they're going to send them to us. It's a bummer, but you're going to get your parts. Now, as far as packaging, the outer aspect of these figures, these come in the same style troll boxes that you might already be familiar with. So humongous boxes covered in that sort of, ephemeral Nate Barsh artwork. So you've got sort of the cosmic, spacey demon theme going on with these guys. But then you've also got stuff, like the trolls, tearing up the battlefield. You've got one of the larger sort of just battle shots on the back of the box as well. And then both of these also include a bio card and a little write-up of Mythos, as we are accustomed to. So let's do it. Let's pull these guys out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, Mythic Legions All-Stars Trolls. So we are back to the big, monstrous figures from the line. These are the new Ice Troll and the new BRONTUS. So if you have these figures originally, we're going to get a bit of a rehash, but with some extra heads, and we are going to have to talk about heads with these figures. And then if you missed the original releases, this is a way to get that particular Troll with a little something extra when they change things up. Now, they are very basic with articulation. They've been that way since the get-go. We are going to run through it, so I'm going to pick one as a guinea pig, and let's see what these guys can do. So we're going to use the Ice Troll here as our guinea pig for articulation because, well, they're all the same. And these guys have never been about articulation or dynamic range. Let's specify it like that. Dynamic range. They have some articulation, but it's minimal at best. And what they do have really doesn't have the greatest range. They're all about size and just wow factor, really. So let's see what these guys can do, see how they move around. So we've got a head that can swivel and rotate, and that's really it. It does have a, the head neck situation where it is jutting forward. So when you rotate it, it is going to look kind of weird. So you've just got to position it. The arms go out slightly at the shoulders. It's not a full 90-degree bend, but it does go out slightly. A lot of these joints are also ratcheted too, so you don't really have any issues with it staying up because it's a big old beefy arm. It's not going to droop, it's going to lock in place. You do have ratcheted elbows. They also do not have a 90-degree bend, but they do have some mobility. And then when it comes to the hands, you've just got swivels down here. So there is no hinge joint, there's no wrist articulation, none of that stuff. It's just a straight rotation there. Now, the torsos on these guys are all, of course, one piece, as you can see, just like, the majority of Mythic Legions figures in general, a single buck torso. And it does have a little bit of shimmy, but it doesn't really do much more than that. And it's, again, just because of how these guys are constructed and that crotch, basically. There's not really any clearance. The legs just go in and out, forward and backward. So they don't go side to side, and there is no thigh swivel on these figures either. They just go frontwards and backwards. And then in that same vein, there is no knee articulation on these guys. So when you want to move them and position them, kind of crunch them down or anything, you are going to be using these hip joints to make that work as best you can. And then when it comes to the feet, they have ball pegs down there, but the feet and the ankles are so chunky that they really don't do a whole lot. So they can sort of shimmy side to side and forward and backwards, and then they can rotate. So these guys, they are articulated, but in a minimal sense. So they don't do a great deal. You're not going to have them like, jumping or bounding across your display or anything like that. They're all about size and heft and just shelf presence, really. But they do have some posability. It's not to say they don't. It's just not their thing. They're all about the look, the aesthetic, and the size. They're big, chunky trolls that do have a little bit of articulation, just nothing crazy to write home about. Now, as far as the aesthetics go, I want to kind of handle this in the sense that we're going to talk about the new figure versus the old figure, because for a lot of folks, they already have this troll. And if you don't, this is going to be an idea of what you are going to be getting when it comes to the missing head sculpt. That, of course, I've already mentioned. The original heads are not in these boxes. So this is our new ice troll, and this is our old ice troll. And for the most part, they are basically the exact same thing. It's obviously the exact same sculpt as far as everything from the neck down. Same sculpt, same parts, but they're not the same. So things like the paint in particular is very different, but in a subtle way. I guess very different, but subtle is probably not the exact best way to describe it. But once you get them next to each other, it does become a little more obvious that there is some differences here. So of course, the first thing we have to talk about is just the overall sculpt and the idea here. So these guys are huge, rocky, craggy trolls, and that's how I've always described them, craggy. So they have all of these like, big callousy pieces all over them, and that's another good way to describe them, like all these like calluses all over them, nasty textured skin. So like all of these big scales and everything that are all over them. These guys are absolutely covered head to toe in sculpt. And I mean, that's normal for legions, but there's a lot more legion here than usual. So there's a lot of sculpt, a lot of detail, and in particular for these guys, because they are very much one color with kind of an overspray, there's a lot of places for paint to sort of seep in and sort of show us that detail. So in this instance, our ice troll is, of course, a white and blue color scheme. So on the original one, he's very, baby blue, powdery blue, kind of glacier blue in many ways. And then there is a white dry brushing over top of him. With our new one, it's the same thing, but it does seem to be a little thicker on the white. And I'm not so sure that it's going to exactly show, perfectly here. But in person, there is a lot more to it, and it just looks a little bit thicker. It's the same kind of application, but it seems to be a little bit more in some ways, and it also seems to be a little more consistently across the entire figure. So things like on the hands and the feet in particular, he does seem to have a little bit more. Not a night and day difference, but enough that you can say, yeah, this is the same kind of troll, but not the same troll, if that makes sense. And then, of course, you've got things like the soft goods, which are really, really close, but they're not exactly the same either. So the finish is a little bit different. This one seems a little bit dirtier. He seems like he just washed his loincloth, maybe. This one has just seen the field of battle, maybe. The bracers, the belt, same thing. It does seem to be very, very similar there. The paint is very consistent. The color and that dry brushing is very consistent. Now, of course, the one big difference is the head sculpt. So, like I mentioned, and I'm going to say it 100 times here, this new one does not come with the original head sculpt. We're going to get it, but it doesn't come with it. That's one of the factory errors involved with this set. This is originally BRONTUS's head sculpt, the Gladiator Orange Troll. And that's what they've done for the second ice troll, to give us an option to not necessarily just rebuy the same troll over and over and over again. So it's a different ice troll. This, of course, is a Cyclops head, and I absolutely love this. On any given day, the original ice troll head is still probably my favorite, but BRONTUS is about a close second, or even a tying head sculpt for me. There's a lot of detail in there, and it, of course, stands out really, really differently compared to our original, because the ice troll is a big, wide, scary thing. He's got scarring all over his face, open mouth, got those big horns on the head. BRONTUS is a little bit more subdued, but then you've got that crazy eyeball and just the detail in the eye itself, that sort of subtle shading around it. And you've got kind of a wet look to it also that does really stand out. And it's a cool head sculpt. I really like the Cyclops idea for a troll in general, but to see it reapplied in the ice troll, I think was a really cool idea. So again, very, very, very similar, but at the same time, just different enough to warrant, in many ways, especially now that I have it in hand, warrant a second purchase on yet another monstrous, massive figure. Now, next up, we've got the BRONTUS troll. And again, just so we're consistent here, This is our new troll. This is our original. This head is not included in the package, and we will be getting it at a later date. BRONTUS also had a chain, because he came in the Colosseum wave of Mythic Legion, so there's a very gladiatorial aspect to this one, where he would be chained up and led into the Colosseum. That was not included. We're going to get it later also. Same exact figure, though, from neck down. Same thing. There are some subtle differences here, though, just like with the Ice Troll. But in some ways, these stuck out a little bit more to me. They are slight changes, but I was more readily able to notice them, I suppose, is the better way to describe it. And the big thing that sticks out with this one are the torsos. So this guy has more of a subtle dry brushing, and a lot more of those spots are slightly more opaque on the torso here, on his belly. So you've got the dry brushing on the pecs and on the stomach, but then you've got all of those spots. Some of the spots are redder, and these are a little bit more yellow compared to what we've got over here. He's got a much more consistently orange belly and torso on the original than our new one. So we've got our Stone Troll BRONTUS here, just to change it up a little bit, and they are very, very similar, but again, there's a lot of little things that just stand out. So again, just like with our Ice Troll, if you've got BRONTUS, this is a reason to want to get the new one, because it is different enough beyond the fact that it does come with an extra head sculpt. Same body. You know, again, it's all the same body through and through, same bracers. We've got our belt buckle, and this looks very similar. The soft goods on this guy look really, really similar as well. Maybe a slight color variation, but it's subtle at best. And then, of course, you've got your head sculpt up here. So BRONTUS was, as I mentioned with the Ice Troll, he was the Cyclops. So you've got this big Cyclops head sculpt here, which looks terrific. Again, one of my favorites. But then we've got our Stone Troll is what they went for with our new figure here. And this guy has a very specific look. You know, he's got sort of a small beady head. He's got those really piercing blue eyes, which definitely sort of mesh with what BRONTUS had to begin with. And then he's got these gnarly teeth, the open mouth, kind of a wet look in there, like we see across the board with trolls generally. And then you've got these tiny tusks that stick out the side. I really like this head sculpt. I mean, I'm a fan of all of them because they're all very much cool in their own way, but I love the tusk idea with this particular troll. So again, great sculpt, tons and tons of paint. I mean, I can't stress that enough. These guys are absolutely covered from head to toe in painted detail. All this sculpt, all this rocky, scaly, craggy texture all over them, because again, you know, I mean, look at all this stuff back here. There's so much detail back here, lots of sculpt, lots of paint, lots of texture with these guys, not just size. There's a lot to these when it comes to shelf presence, and of course how they're going to display with your legions. So if you already have BRONTUS, you're going to be in for a very, very familiar troll. But at the same time, I think just like with the Ice Troll, there are enough small changes beyond our head sculpt options that will allow him to be unique amongst your trolls. And of course, we have to do size comparisons. If you don't have a troll, you don't know how big these are until you get them in hand. So to start with, here is a Mythic Legions. We've got Aerith here. So a normal 1.0 figure, but he's bigger than usual because of the flames and the pauldrons. Let's do a Mezco. Here is Atticus Doom, tiny little guy. Here is a NECA Turtle, a Toon Turtle, so there's Leo. Let's do a Marvel Legend. Here is a US Agent, a pretty standard Marvel Legends figure. Let's do another Legions. Here is a 2.0 figure, so here is a Goblin. And then let's do one more, 7-inch scale figure, but one that ended up being a lot bigger than expected. Here is Grimsword from NECA's D&D line. So, I mean, you can see these guys are absolutely huge. They're imposing, they're massive, they're incredibly beefy and thick, front to back, side to side, top to bottom, head to toe. There's a lot of figure, there's a lot of toy here. They are absolutely going to dominate your shelf, especially once you get a whole bunch of these guys. And lastly, as far as accessories goes, our trolls come with one massive, massive accessory, one big weapon. Now, the BRONTUS troll, the Stone Troll, is supposed to come with chains. As we know, those were missed, just like the heads. We're going to get them later. But we do get the signature weapon for what BRONTUS had initially, which is this big tree trunk type mace, skull weapon, spear type thing. So it's got a skull impaled on the end of it. And what's really funny is that it's a Stone Troll skull. It's just much, much, much larger. I mean, it's absolutely massive by comparison, so it's a much bigger troll's skull, I assume. And it is multiple parts, so it does come apart. You can take it apart, you know, just to make it easier. I will mention, when it comes to putting the weapons in these guys' hands, one solution is to heat up the hands and stretch them out to put them in, or just go in there and do it. You're going to get paint rub if you do that. You're probably going to get paint rub no matter what. The hands are a tight fit. This is a really cool weapon. I love it. This is probably my favorite troll weapon just because of the fact that, well, it's a skull. It's the exact same thing that we got with BRONTUS. Paint details are a little bit different. It's a little bit more muddy brown on the skull. And then what's really nice is that the original weapon fell apart really, really, really easily. Like if you look at it wrong, it'll fall apart. This one does seem to be a little bit more sturdy. It's not perfect, but it is a little bit sturdier, and it's just as cool looking now as it was when we first got it. Now, as far as our ice troll, this troll has what is arguably the most impractical weapon out of all of the trolls, because it is this enormous ice sword. And I can't stress just how big this is. I mean, this is literally big enough for a human to wield it as an actual weapon. And that's true for all of them, but it's more true for this. It's the exact same thing that we got with the ice troll. I do think that this one is a little bit more translucent, not as frosted when it comes to the paint as the original one, but it's basically the exact same thing. It is two different parts, and it's keyed so that it only goes in one way. It does fall apart relatively easily though, so like if you're gonna bang it on something, it's probably gonna pop out. But it is no less awesome. I mean, I really do like this thing. It is just incredibly, it's just impractical. It's really, really, really big. I mean, it's taller than the trolls, so it's, I mean, I guess it's the biggest thing in Mythic Legions, right? It's the tallest thing anyway. So there's a lot of weapon here. It is over the top and gaudy and ridiculous, but it's really cool. So we do get a couple of massive, massive weapons with these guys. Crazy, over the top, just to match the size and scale of our trolls. And then, of course, we're going to get the chains for this big guy in a couple months. So yeah, overall, really happy with these guys. I've been a fan of the trolls, you know, from the get-go, basically. I will again say that they are prohibitively large, so they aren't necessarily for everybody. And at this point, I have so many of these damn things that I'm not sure if I could ever possibly use more of them. But they are really cool. They have a tremendous shelf presence. Sculpt is crazy. Paint is crazy. The only thing that's truly lacking on these guys is articulation, but that's never been their focus, so it's never been something that's really been a hang-up for me. It's all about the look. It's all about the size. It's all about the shelf presence. Again, these guys are missing things right out of the box. The extra head sculpts were omitted. We are going to get replacements, and they're giving us both head sculpts to allow for easier swapping because these head sculpts that we got included have hard inner rings that make it difficult to swap. The new ones will have soft inner rings that make it easier to swap, and we're going to get the BRONTUS chains. So they are making it right for us. It doesn't excuse the mistake, but I'm happy that they are going to fix that for us. So that's going to do it for this look at the Mythic Legions All-Stars Trolls. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And until next time.